Imagine this. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings. This is your house. But is it your home? Hi, I'm Nelson DeMello, and join me as we try to find our home beyond our borders.
I don't know. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good take.
You can't. There's no dichotomy of morality here to define sin with. You just won't get a satisfying answer if that's how you measure sin. If all you measure sin with is, am I being a good person, essentially, you're going to fall short of the depth, the nuance, even, yeah, like that's one side of it, the depth and the nuance of what sin is. Like I think in that definition, you won't even understand how deep your sin goes, first of all, but then also on the other end, how will you know if you're pleasing the Lord, right? And I'll tell you that, I could go through so many verses. I know Hebrews 11 says that only through faith do we please the Lord, one. And then Romans 14:23 says that sin is faithlessness, right? And we've been toying with this idea. We've been looking at this, and we've been trying to reimagine this concept of sin. That's one thing that we're doing as we go through Numbers, really as we go through the Old Testament. And so here we have another example of this. And it is going to be in chapter 9, Numbers 9. We will start context or start with it. Let's just start with it, and then I'll give you context with other verses. So chapter 9, verse 13. Okay. So it says, "But if anyone who is clean and is not on a journey fails to keep the Passover, that person shall be cut off from his people, because he did not bring the Lord's offering at its appointed time. That man shall bear his sin." That man shall bear his sin. So basically, if he is not unclean, and if he's not out of office, if he's not out of town, he better be participating in the Passover. And the Passover was a festival. It was a feast. It was a party. So God is saying that if you are able to party, you must party. This is great. This is fantastic. That I bet that puts your panties in a twist. Or not. I mean, or you're like, what the heck? I didn't know that God was chill like that. You know what I mean? But no, it's true. So we just read this, right? We read that if you don't participate in Passover, if you're not going to the cookout, the corporate cookout, I should say, corporate in the sense of like all of Israel's doing this. All of Israel is participating in this feast, in this festival. They're dancing, they're having a good time, they're eating. If you are not going to participate of that, then you, my friend, are cut off, and you bear your own sin. Isn't that interesting? You bear your own sin for not going to a party. And look, I looked up the Hebrew here, right? The word sin here is chata. It is miss the mark, right? And I've said this before. I'm going to say it again. But we interpret miss the mark. We look at mark and we're like, of course, it's morality. That's obviously, it's just incongruent with how the story is going. It doesn't make sense for us to be immoral for not being a part of a party. That doesn't make sense, right? Parties are like a preference thing. Like, even if it was just like a nice social gathering, like, sure, I get it. You're going to make the argument like, oh yeah, well, you can party hard or, have alcohol, drugs and and that's immoral. Sure. Yeah. But one, God is like, hey, you better party, right? That's one thing. So, I mean, it can't be that kind of party. But it's a party and you're commanded to. Sorry, this fly is hostile. Okay, so that's what's going on here, and So what is going on here, right? Like what is the sin? What is wrong, incorrect, inharmonious? What is foolish? What is bad about me not wanting to be a part of this party? Well, let's go to verse 23, verse 22 and verse 23. It's gonna seemingly it's not gonna make any sense, but it's a verse that ties into this greater narrative that we ought to keep track of, right? So verse 22. So it says, whether it was 2 days or a month or a longer time, that the cloud continued over the tabernacle, abiding there. The people of Israel remained in camp and did not set out. But when it lifted, they set out. At the command of the Lord they camped, and at the command of the Lord they set out. They kept the charge of the Lord at the command of the Lord by Moses. So we have to remember, God gave statutes, God gave commands, not entirely on what's right and wrong, but how they ought to live and their rhythm of life, and essentially giving language to their culture. There's this sense that if you're not going to live the lifestyle that God has commanded, then you don't abide in him. Now here we're seeing complete trust, right? We don't move unless God moves, and we move when God does, right? We see this breakdown. We will see breakdowns of this often, and these are the rebellions that happen in the mid chapters of Numbers. In the perfect scenario, no matter how slow God is going or fast, we are following him. If God remains, we remain. If God is still, we are still. If God is moving, we are moving. If God says jump, we jump. This idea becomes very, how would I say it? It's like, not that it's a gray area, but then it becomes like a subjective experience, right? And that's the tough thing. I think what it comes down to, this is maybe like a cliche, but that our faith is a journey, right? And I mean, even when we are trying to make a parallel with Israel in our lives, I mean, it is a journey. That's obvious. But I think when we think of the journey, we want a map, right? We want a sure thing. We want destinations. We want charts. We want everything to be planned out. Like them here, they're following a cloud. They don't know where they're going, right? And if you ever get the chance, right, you can Google this. It's not like this hard thing to find. But their journey from Egypt to the Promised Land, I don't know if you've ever there's a bit, like I don't know, Tintin and whatever, right? Where like they're going and they go back and then they go in circles and they're like all over the map and da-da-da. That's exactly what it looks like. They had no idea of like coordination, coordinates, and all these things. They were just going, right? Like, oh, the cloud is moving east. Let's go east. And in the same way, in our lives, maybe it's not a physical location, but it is where God wants us to be planted. Maybe it's a perspective. Maybe it's certain relationships, right? We have to constantly be in communication with God and asking God, how can I be intentional in this season of my life? How can I be faithful in this season of my life? You've put people in my life. You have me doing this job. You have me, I don't know, at this church, in this community. How can I be intentional? How can I be faithful? And so that's what, not sinning looks like. But I guess really what we should be talking about is like the opposite, like the other side of the coin, right? Like we were talking about how to be faithful and all these things, but what does it look like to, in this context especially, what is the sin? I guess I still haven't answered that question. And I think the sin is going against the grain of what God is doing, going against the grain of God's culture, going against the grain of God's lifestyle, what he has implemented, right? That might look, obviously, that looks different than today than it was, 4,000 years ago. But the heart of it, of course, still remains. This is, I don't know, ironically, maybe this is where cultural Christianity comes in the sense that even rejecting that, right? Man, yeah. Now this becomes a tough talk. Yesterday, like last time, I talked about how pastors might water down the gospel so that people are functional, essentially, in the kingdom of God. I think there's also this aspect, right, that like not everyone is meant to be a pastor. Not everyone's meant to be a worship leader, a missionary in the classical sense, meaning, cold calling, evangelism, being, just charismatic and street evangelism. Like that's not everybody. We're of course called to spread the love and the grace and the truth. But I guess what I mean is like daily rhythms are going to be different. I think that's really what I'm trying to get at is daily rhythms are going to be different. So the pastor, obviously, he's reading the Bible 2-3 hours a day and, learning more or whatever, at least something of he should, right? If that's his job, like do it well. But, Joe, the mechanic, he might not have that rhythm, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is that even the daily rhythms of life isn't in the tangible, right? It's not like you're not the equivalent of not joining the festival, the Passover isn't you not reading the Bible 2 hours a day, right? But there is this but what would be intangible? What does every Christian should do? Every Christian filled with the Spirit, what do they all have in common? What do they all do? I think that prayer that is unceasing. And you're asking me, what do you mean, like praying with my words 24/7? That's absurd. I can't pray for more than 2 minutes, like more than 5, more than 10. What are you talking about? I'm talking about, well, prayer is conversation with God, and that goes 2 ways, meaning that we can have our ears open 24/7 at the very least and sprinkle in our words there. Prayer becomes this connection. Look, this happens with me, maybe happens with you. You call a friend or something. My wife calls me on our drive from work. We get off at the same time, so we're driving, the hour. And we call each other. And sometimes we just sit in silence. But the call is there, right? She is on the other side of the line. And that, honestly, is kind of how prayer never ceasing works. It's like this it's this shifting of your mind in understanding that connection is open 24/7, and that you say something, it's being heard. And when in being attentive, right? Like I can put the volume all the way down, have the call on, and if she does say something, I'd miss it, right? But I have the volume at a decent volume, and I can hear her. So if she does, 5 minutes of silence, but then she's like, oh my goodness, I see a deer, and then I'm there to interact. I'm there to listen and comment and have that conversation, right? That is one aspect, I think. I think another aspect is the fruits of the Spirit, right? That's another thing. I think going to church, although that sounds like something you check off, most people don't even check that off. And, you know, that's like, how can you be God-centered and have the culture of God if you're not with God's people? That doesn't make sense. You can't, like, there's the aspect of, like, show me your 5 friends and I'll show you who you are. There's the aspect of, yeah, like, you are who you hang with, right? And if you're not hanging with godly people, well, then you're not a godly person. That's sorry to tell you that, So if you're isolated in your faith, you're not doing it right. That's sucky, but I get it, meeting new people is hard sometimes. There's church hurt, there's all kinds of things, but I think this is something to be considerate of you're not going to grow in your faith without other people. There's just no way around that, right? I think that'll be it for chapter 9, but let's go through chapter 10 since I have time. Gotta change the battery though, so give me a sec.
Wait, hold up. If at any point in this you said, dang, I never thought about it like that, please subscribe. What are you doing, man? I'm trying to pay my bills. Okay, anyways, let's get back to the serious stuff. All right, see it.
Actually, before we go into that, can I show you something? I'm going to show you something. Look, verse 14, right? It says, and if a stranger sojourns among you and would keep the Passover to the Lord, according to the statutes of the Passover and according to its rules, so shall he do. You shall have one statute, both for the sojourner and for the native. I wanted to talk about, I don't know, I've heard, I don't know if you've heard people say, the Bible's racist and this and that, and we're going to see that God really adopts the foreigners. Like, there's a lot of statutes, rules that are like, hey, you and the sojourner, you and the foreigner can participate, can do this, can be a part of this. It really just gives this treatment of a first-class citizen, essentially, right? The thing here, though, and I don't know, I guess it depends on how level-headed, reasonable, I guess, you want to be, but this idea of assimilation, right? In this verse, we see, like, if they're going to practice the way that you practice, then they can practice it. And I think maybe it's just because it's like a no-brainer. Like, hey, if you're not going to do the thing, then what are you doing here? I will say the opposite end is true, where if a native isn't doing it, and that's what we were reading, if a native is not doing the thing, then they're cast out and they're set apart in the bad way from the rest of the community, and they have to, live on their own or whatever. They're cast out. There is this idea of assimilation, whether to the native or the foreigner. Like, if you're willing to assimilate, if you're willing to be a part of this, you absolutely can. But if you're not, then bye, right? Whether or not you're a native or not, it doesn't matter. That's an interesting way of thinking about it. I think, well, I don't know. Not to get political, because whatever, but I'm thinking more of just culture. I don't know. My head is going to more of like the intangible things, right? Whether it be church, and this is kind of the thing, right? A wolf is a wolf, a sheep is a sheep. So if you're going to be a wolf, if you're trying to bring people to a different religion, if you're trying to, I don't know, sleep around, if you're, selling drugs in a church, like whatever the case is, like, sorry, buddy, you got to go. Even if, like, your dad went to this church, your grandpa went to this church, like, it doesn't matter. That's something I think about. Even with, like, immigration. If we were to kind of mirror the Bible in the way we deal with immigration, there is this aspect of assimilating, which, it has that boundary of like, I don't think it's xenophobic to have this expectation of if you're going to live inside of this culture, you have to be a part of this culture. I don't want to trigger and say like, if you're going to be living in America, you're going to have to do, you have to be American, but it's kind of that, but also in the sense of like, just because you're born here doesn't make you American kind of deal. Just because you're born here doesn't mean that you have ties to this country and love for this country. I mean, that'd be a crazy thing if it was possible to be revoked of your American citizenship, even though you were born here. That's the way Israel did it, Imagine being born in America, but I don't know, you didn't set off a firework on the 4th of July and they're like, you're not American anymore. Or yeah, like you burn the American flag, you're not American anymore. You are, I don't know where you'd be deported because every piece of land on earth is tied to somewhere. But could you imagine if you could have your naturalized citizenship revoked? That'd be crazy. Yeah, and then, you have people from outside the country loving it here, being a part of it, being a part of the economy, being, citizen, like I say worthy citizens, but, just paying your dues, whether that's financially, that's socially, culturally, like whatever that is, you're doing your part in making the society better. And then they're like, oh yeah, here you go, bud. It's interesting. I don't know how that would work with, 350 million people, but I don't know, fun thought experiment maybe. I don't know. I hope I didn't, upset anyone. Again, I say that more because it doesn't upset me. It's not like a weird topic, but I know how people get about immigration. So, or at least online. I don't know. Whatever, man. But yeah, chapter 10, I think what's interesting here, we start seeing something very peculiar, very weird. And it's this idea that God is anthropomorphized. Anthropomorphized. Say that 10 times fast. It's the idea of making something human-like. Moses will start anthropomorphizing God. He will start making God have human attributes. We might have already seen it, right? When we look at, his rage flare up and all of these things, the literal Hebrew is like his nose flares, or his eyes burn red hot, and it's like, well, he's spirit, so he doesn't have eyes, he doesn't have a nose. So this is a metaphor for, well, we get there when we get there. But in chapter 10, verse 35 and 36, nothing crazy yet, but we do have here, whenever the ark set out, Moses said, "Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee before you." And when it rested, he said, "Return, O Lord, to the 10,000 thousands of Israel." You read that, again, maybe you're not seeing it, but he is sending God off, and he's welcoming him back in, as if he's not everywhere. So that's kind of where I did the bulk of my thinking and studying and questioning was on this idea. Wait, why would Moses, knowing he's omnipresent, hopefully, like that's what we think, that's what we assume, why would he be telling God to leave, right? Why would he be telling him to come back? There is one aspect, right, which is basically that he's seeing the cloud go and come back, or go and then rest, and he's like, hey, like, welcome back kind of deal. And this is kind of a chant to get everyone hyped, like when the cloud starts leaving, and then he's like, go scatter our enemies before us, and everyone's like, yeah, like that's definitely a possibility. But I can't help but having to break this down, because we will see again when God gets angry, That's an anthropomorphization of God. God being immutable, meaning he does not change, means that he doesn't have passion, because passion comes and goes. Like emotion, like feelings comes and goes. He can't have feelings that would mean he would be changed. That means that he would make decisions irrationally, or I mean, not that. See, and I don't want to make like that's the tough thing about like going through this is like, oh, God didn't have emotion. He was completely logical and this and that. But that's not what I mean. What I mean is he's consistent. He has to be consistent, right? Which means that he can have a hatred towards something, and that is always there, like the Hulk. Just kidding. But it's like an electric fence, maybe. Like the electric fence, the electric fence is always on, but it only like makes noise. It only like shocks when something touches it, right? I think that's how we can see his view and understand his emotions. They're always on. Like his love for you is always on, but you feel it and you see it and you do that, whatever, when you're aligned there, when you're in the, like if they're light rays, like if you get caught in the light, you can see it, but the light is always on, right? Same thing for his hate, like his anger and his wrath, where anger and wrath are pointed at sin. And if you get in the way of that, you know what I mean? Like if it's a light, like if that's the direction you're going in, you're going to see and feel his wrath. But it's always there. That tells us something. It tells us something about us. That tells something about Moses, which is basically God is infinitely and always and eternally feeling all of these things. Let's say feeling all of these things all of the time. When we see God change, it's not that God changed, but that we're in a different position, seeing a different side of God. So God is immutable, right? God doesn't change, which means that, all of his light rays, his love, his joy, his anger, his wrath, all of those things are shining all the time. He's always feeling these things. But depending on where we are, we're going to feel that. We're going to experience that in different ways at different times. Why is that important? Well, because when we sin, we think, oh, God hates me now. And then when we're doing good, we think God loves me. Both things can be true at the same time, always. Everything, I mean, yeah, I don't know. This is truly a rant. I don't know if, like, I tried to, just stick to what's in the word, and tried to bring out the themes and stay there. But this isn't where we are right now. But the idea that God, oh no, I actually completely forgot. Hold up. No, yeah, I can't remember, dude. I'm sorry. But yeah, this idea that like if I'm sinning, then God hates me, and if I'm, being obedient and reading my Bible and this and that, he loves me. This is exhausting. One, this is toxic. Two, that is just like, and it's untrue. Three, right? That's not how God functions. God always loves you. God always hates your sin. And that's what I was going to say. I was going to talk about God's jealousy, right? If God's wrath is a function of his love. What do I mean? Let's say you have a kid. Maybe you do have a kid and you love him. He's precious to you. You see him running out to the street. The adrenaline comes. You see your car coming. And so you're running. Boom, boom, boom. You grab the kid. The car is speeding through and brakes all crazy, and you grab the kid and you're like, what the heck are you doing, bro? Don't you see that this is a neighborhood? Kids are out here and da da da. Did you sin? Maybe in our words, not in our feelings at all. What happened? You were jealous for your child. What is jealousy? Jealousy is having an anger towards anything that threatens what you love. Okay. having anger towards anything that threatens what you love. Okay? Threatens the bond, threatens the being, threatens whatever, right? So your jealousy for your child caused an anger towards the driver. You're with me? All right. So in the same sense, God hates sin because it separates you from him. It separates me from him. So out of his jealousy for us, right? Because he loves us and wants to protect us and keep us, he hates anything that separates us. That is the function of why he hates sin. That is why he hates sin. Now, I guess maybe we are going full circle. Why is why is partying at the festival a sin, and why does God want to kick you out if you don't participate? Well, he is loving you. He wants you to flourish. He wants to be close to you. He wants to be a part of your life. And saying no to the festival is saying no to all of that. It's saying no to flourishing. It's saying no to him. It's saying no to his culture, his what he has instilled to be closer to him, right? I get confused when I'm trying to like make this practical because I'm really bad with examples. And so I'm just trying to get your mind frame right. And my goodness, where am I going with this? Dude. Oh my God. Okay, but let's just go back, right? And that's chapter 9. Chapter 10, we're looking at God's anthropomorphization. Oh my goodness, that word, dude, I hate it. But it's going to come up a lot. So this idea that God moves and comes back, or moves and stays there, and we have to catch up to God and this and that. This idea also, right, made me question and think about, and like, isn't God omnipresent? What does this mean, omnipresent? I did quite a bit of research here, and it's actually phenomenal. I think if people understood God's omnipresence, they wouldn't make such, like, spiritualism would die in terms, New Ageism, like spirituality, that would die. So people make two mistakes that are very common. I made this mistake. So for example, when we read John 1, let's just read John 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. In him was life, and the life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. I'm really looking at this verse 3, right? All things were made through him, and without him was not anything made that was made. This verse causes a lot of speculation and a lot of misinterpretation when we don't understand God's omnipresence. And you're thinking, well, that's creation. Isn't that his power? Isn't that his his omnipotence? But actually, omnipotence and his omniscience stems from his omnipresence. This is what's insane. Okay, so we read that, right? Not anything that was made without him. We think, okay, that means everything has God. Like if he was like a filter between not creating and creating, and everything, like idea and whatever hits this filter and it becomes, right? Then everything is of him. And that's pantheism, right? If everything has a little bit of God, then that's pantheism, and that is not true, right? And we get a lot of spiritual ideas. New Age spiritualism comes from this idea that everything has God, and God is in the trees, God is in the water, God is in we're all stardust and God, we're all God. And okay, again, a dysfunction of a misunderstanding of God's omnipresence. The other thing that could be the case is that God is everywhere, that he holds space everywhere. So as if he's the air that we breathe, right? He's everywhere all at once. And this is more common. This is what I believe. This is probably what you believe. But that's not the case. And you're thinking, why? Well, that would confine him to creation. If God was like substantively everywhere, then like the void, he can't be in the void, right? Like there's voids in space, like outside the universe, between galaxies, I don't know, whatever. Like black holes, he's not there, would be kind of the refutation. And you're like, no, but that's not necessarily what I mean. But what you mean and what I meant is something along the lines of like, if matter exists, he can be present there. And it does imply that if there is no matter, that he can't exist. Then, man, then how is God omnipresent? What's the alternative? This is the mind-blowing thing. So he's not present with everything, right? He's not present. He's not present in everything, right? He's not present in everything. He's not in the water. He's not, in the air. He's not in me. He's not in he is in me for a different reason, obviously, but he's not he's not in matter, right? He's not present in everything. He's not present with everything. He's not with you and me in the sense of like, he's holding my hand, he's right here, and he's also there with you, and he's also in China, and he's also, whatever. It's actually the step before then. It's actually the layer before then that he is present to everything. Man, what does that mean? How is he present to everything? Well, essentially, existence itself is a function of God thinking of it. God's omnipresence. We exist because he thinks of us. We continue to exist because he continues to think of us. So he's not necessarily like, how is he omnipresent? He is thinking of, he's imagining, he is creating all things continuously. And so he is present to everything. He sees what's going on. He knows what's going on. That's what I was saying. Out of his omnipresence comes his omniscience and his omnipotence, right? So with his thoughts, he is creating the universe. And because he is thinking of all things, he knows all things, right? It means that if he hasn't thought of it, it doesn't exist. It means that if he's not thinking about it, it does not exist. So he is thinking of all of things all the time. And that's how we exist. And we are suspended in his thoughts. And it's not that we are his thoughts. It's not that we're his brain. Not that the universe is his brain. It's not necessarily what it means. But it is that God has to be conscious of us for us to exist. That means a lot of things. That means that you are never alone. You can't be alone. Because if you were alone, if God was not thinking of you, and if God could not fathom you, you would not exist, right? Which means that there is really nowhere you can go. When David says, in the depths of Sheol, you are there. Well, Sheol could not exist. Literally, Sheol could not exist if God could not fathom it, if God could not think of it. So he's there. He is present to David, even in Sheol. He's present to David everywhere. He's present to all of us. Anywhere we go, no matter what we do. And so, again, like what I'm looking at here, right, in Numbers 10 isn't a, like, the verses that we looked at doesn't point to this, but it brought it up. And that's what I had to, like, think through, study about, because I'm it is a confusing thing. If Moses is talking about God as if he can only be at one place at one time, then again, it's that whole thing of like, well, this verse kind of negates his omnipresence, his omnipotence, his thing, which kind of gets to another point, which is that, well, I might have to save it for next time, but essentially this idea that, like, the prophets, they speak for God, but it is this incomplete picture. And not that we can relativize what they're saying, not that we can disregard what they're saying, but we have to interpret what these prophets are saying in context of who we know God is already. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but for example, there's this there's a story of this king who's doing bad or whatever, and the prophet goes and says, you're gonna die in a couple days, and he prays to God, and then before the prophet goes all the way down out of the castle, he comes back up, he hears from God, he goes back up and says, okay, God gave you 15 more years. It's not that God changed his mind, right? Because again, he's immutable and he's omniscient. He knows everything. He's not going to be like, if you know everything, you can't change your mind. And so it's those things of, like, we have to interpret the story around what we already know about God. All right, I gotta go. So see you guys. Love y'all. Have a good day. Hey guys, thank you so much for going on this journey with me. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, follow, and remember, there is more to life, and that is good news. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.